I could intro this. Who says I couldn't? I could definitely intro this.
I heard some people saying you couldn't intro a
Fuck
podcast.
Is it Dave again? Is it?
Save
It's
your
always
beard.
Dave to save my beard. Wow, it's like a medieval insult. That's
He couldn't intro a podcast to save his beard.
Yeah, he said it over a goblet of mead. That son of a bitch. No, I can intro this absolutely. I'm happy to because I love The Witcher 3, the video game that we're about to talk about. I love it. I know. I love this game. I played it all the way through, every single mission of it, and I am proud that on 1Upsmanship, the show in which this is, we're going to talk about Witcher 3 today. I love it. My name is Adam Ganser.
I'm Michael Swain.
Yeah, we're going to talk about, as I said, Witcher 3, a great game that deserves to be dissected in this format. So, because we're so driven by formats, Mr. Swain, how about you start with a speed run?
That's true. That would be in format.
Yeah.
We're just joylessly getting it done.
I know.
Another day at the 1Upsmanship factory.
Just churning out content.
Past
right?
that first checkpoint that we all knew was coming in exactly the same place as it always does in the drudgery that is 1Upsmanship. In the context of this game, what would it be?
It'd be
kneeling
traveling
and meditating?
Yes, it could be that. It could also be traveling to another land, because there's basically like 4 lands in this game.
All right, let's hit up Skellige for my speed run.
Yeah.
We'll start some kind of evil pirate bone clock, presumably. Start that. Witcher 3 is the third in the Witcher series. Stop the clock. No. Fuck.
I love the way you cheat now at this segment.
Clock continues. When it's my turn, I'm treating the speedrun more as an improv game now than an actual thing, which I shouldn't do because there's plenty of information to be had about The Witcher 3, which is a third-person hack and slash and limited magic game in the sense that you basically start with a pool of 5 spells and you do not add to them. They increase in power but not in variety, which is very interesting. It's that's unusual in this genre, which is epic fantasy. I would say it's somewhat bears resemblance to traditional Arthurian high fantasy a la J.R.R. Tolkien, but
a little bit.
It has some differences as well. It's more rooted in folklore, European folklore, and I don't know the name of the author of the book series, but it's based on a book series, and the author is obviously interested in obscure folklore, and that has been translated into the game, and presumably into the new show, because who the fuck? Is it HBO? Is it Showtime? Stars?
That I don't remember. I don't think it's HBO.
One of these premium channels / services is doing a Witcher TV show with Henry Cavill, and it also remains fairly true to the core concepts of The Witcher, which are as follows. Geralt of Rivia is a Witcher. In this universe, a Witcher is someone who's undergone this kind of specific training that is very grueling and brutal and involves painful infusion of magical forces. And I'm not clear on all the nitty-gritty details, but you come out as sort of a Wolverine type, like a super strong mutant,
emotionless in theory,
who's can't feel emotions and is haunted by the fact that their childhood sucked, but it made them very strong.
And also you're a hot boy. Let's be honest, that's part of it. You turn into a hot boy. Right?
It makes your hair white from the sheer stress of it. I think
women
Witchers
fling
almost all have white hair.
themselves at Geralt. They fling themselves at him, which I assume is part of it.
I don't know if that's part of all Witchers, because it also has sort of a James Bond feel where it's male fantasy fulfillment. Is that true of all Witchers, that they slay the puss, or is that because Geralt could just happen to be handsome and disarming?
I got the feeling like because they were so emotionally unavailable, it was sort of a regular experience. It might have been one of the vials.
Incel fantasy guy saying chicks only date assholes anyway. This guy's a total prick. So
I mean, don't quote me on it. But it might have been one of the mutagens that he gets thrust into his spine.
Well, he's Batman too. I think it can all be summed up in he talks like this. He's one of these guys.
Right.
And that's Geralt. But what's cool about this particular James Bond fantasy dude is he has 2 swords. He's got an iron sword and a silver sword for fighting
Yeah.
monsters. And he makes traps and he makes bombs and he has these 5 sigils that cause these 5 magical effects. And using that limited pool of tools, basically, that you have strategically available at all times, you go around as a much needed and relied upon, but also much feared bounty hunter of monsters, which is what the term Witcher really refers to, is these superhuman types who travel from town to town accepting bounties on monsters. Because indeed, the land is riddled with fantasy monsters like griffins and minotaurs and anything you can imagine like that, and some you've never heard of before.
Yep.
And in The Witcher 3: The Wild Hunt, there's a particular plot related to the Wild Hunt, which is this extra-dimensional, ghostly, spectral band of hunters who sweep through this plane on horseback and end up kidnapping or inconveniencing someone important to Geralt, and he goes on a quest to save them that ends up, threatening the Earth itself or whatever.
Yeah, there's sort of a doom host threatening to destroy our existence.
Yeah, because their universe is being destroyed by some kind of frost, and they need to invade another one, an adjacent universe. But at the end of the day, it's by CD Projekt Red, who everyone's talking about because they have Cyberpunk 2077 on the horizon, and it's about a fantasy world and slashing and killing monsters, and it was super well received, and we're going to get into why. Stop the clock.
I love that speed run for everything but the
thorough.
speedness of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Really enjoyed
Too
it.
thorough.
A little bit. But that's not
that
so
makes
bad.
that makes it time for rants, which means I can, just take my shirt off and chill out for a while.
Yeah, just, go about stealing some of the foodstuffs of your local castle.
Because of the sheer effort it takes to do a speed run, we generally alternate making your fearless host Adam Ganser player 1 this round.
Yes,
in terms of rantage.
And I'm going to fast travel to some bog I've been to before to.
That's a checkpoint.
To pour my opinions out for you. So, Witcher 3 is, I think, my favorite RPG of this console cycle. I don't think that's even that controversial of a take.
I'm sorry to interrupt so early in a rant, which is antithetical to the nature of rants, but because IGN has forced me to be so knowledgeable now, because it's my day job, about the details, I just got to bring up Divinity 2. Is that something you're even aware of?
I haven't even played Divinity 2, so I can't speak to that one. So maybe that one's great.
It is obscure to the average player, but it is very well known among games journalists and critics, and I got to admit, it does fucking rule.
I'm happy to hear that, because that means I have something to play and we can talk about. Nonetheless, Witcher 3, having not played it, is definitely better. I don't know. I just say Witcher 3 is really great.
You like Witcher better, definitely.
I think I probably would. Witcher 3 is one of the only games that I've ever played every single thing in it, all the way to the end, multiple times. I have played it all the way through the plot and the side quest and the DLC, all the way through multiple times, because I really liked it that much. I did not necessarily think that Geralt was that great, although he is a fun cipher. I just really liked all the different little stories that you get to encounter and some of the sad, tragic circumstances of medieval life that this game explores.
Oh, yeah, I forgot to say the tone is very sad.
It's very
dark.
sorrowful. Yeah, there's a lot of sorrow in this game. And Geralt is actually not that sorrowful, considering that. I think he adds a little levity to the thing, in fact, which is funny because for the most part, this is a sort of sad world is a beating down kind of world game, and I really liked it for that because it wasn't morose. It was just like a little sort of wistful. It was sad and wistful. Really great. I will say that I don't know that I am being that fair when I say that I loved it this much, because if I think about the game mechanics, it's pretty light on interesting game mechanics. I found that once I got all the masterworked outfits, like the bear outfit and the the cat outfit and all that shit. Once I got that stuff and the best swords, I basically just like cut a swath through the entire game, which honestly for a game like an RPG is kind of how I want to do it. I don't really want to struggle. I just want to like get to be as powerful as I can be and then like cut the shit out of a ghoul if I can. You know what I mean? Just like carve my way through a golem. And I did that and it was great. And the story was the thing that kept me coming back and I loved it for that. That's my rant.
Player 2 logging on. I think a fair encapsulation of the way it feels to play this game is that it's like Skyrim with better graphics with the camera zoomed out more. And I mean that as a compliment. I really enjoy I honestly don't think graphics are paramount for me usually, but there's something very accomplished about CD Projekt Red's graphics in a way that I feel it bodes well for Cyberpunk 2077. I think they're great at what I would call in the filmmaking world transparent filmmaking. It's like, yeah, there it is. There it is laid out before you. Everything works as expected. I find that personally, it took me a few tries to get into the gameplay of The Witcher.
Same.
The fact that it's life bars that diminish over time always bothers me. Always, as fans of the show will have heard me say many, many times. I like the more holistic, like I hit them on the arm. Their arm animation, like I like the visceral impact of like physics games and things like that more than I like go up to this creature, do this animation over and over, and when the red bar reaches 0, that creature will do a death animation. And this is sort of a mix of that and viscerality because the sword swipes do feel impactful, but then I found that the 5 sigils I could use felt less and less interesting to use as the game wore on.
Agreed.
And the traps felt less and less worthwhile to craft.
Agreed.
Because the sword, as simple and repetitive as it makes the gameplay, the plot is interesting enough that, like Adam said, once the sword is powerful enough to kill everything, I'm like, may as well just kill these fools and move on. I want to know what happens next. And that's good. That's a strong thing to want from a game. But I just feel like I have to point out that it's not something that can usually capture Adam's interests. Like, welcome to the world of liking a spreadsheet with graphics overlaid on it.
I think it's fair to say that I didn't nerd out on this game the way that I would need to enjoy most RPGs.
But you played through it twice.
Because I like the stories. I really like the stories.
It's real long.
Yeah. But
it reminds me very much of. Oh, that's the end of my rant. Past the checkpoint. Whatever. Game on. It reminds me of Hellboy, which is another thing where the A-plot sort of is willing to pause so that it can just dispense folklore. It's very folklore driven, and it's about fucked up folklore. Like, I think my favorite story of all is the ghost of the aborted baby.
Yeah, that's a really cool. That first sort of manner with that guy, I think, is when the story doesn't feel too epic, and when it's really like, my God, this is going to have some winding dark caverns that you're going to go down. And
when you realize that the plot is about the fact that he beats his wife, you're like, oh, I didn't know we were going that realistic tragedy-wise.
Yeah, I mean, it still feels like it was sort of gently treated in a way. It certainly describes really dark facts, but it's not in any way overly sensitive about it. It's very like, you're going to feel as sad as you would feel about that fact. Like, that's how sad you're going to feel about it.
And I actually question that it's canon that Geralt can't feel feelings because he comes off as a pretty decent man most of the time.
I don't think
in a way where he does seem to have some feelings.
Yeah, he has some, but he's not. I think he's a little more emotionally deadened than the average person.
You know what I mean? Like, he does and says the right thing. Like, he'll bury the baby and be like, "This is good. You've done the right thing.
Right.
This will be well now." It's like if you had no emotions, you would not comfort someone because you perceive that they're in pain.
Yeah.
It's just like, I actually, despite whatever they were trying to accomplish, or perhaps it was what they were trying to accomplish, I actually find Geralt quietly very noble and likable in a similar way to Hellboy. I think Geralt is a pretty cool guy.
They're not willing to let you make Geralt into a complete maniac.
Oh
like,
yeah, it's
he can't be that.
It is not Fallout. You cannot go around slaughtering everyone and being like, "I'm Geralt."
Or Skyrim. It's also not like Skyrim. Like there's definitely a way. Like Geralt is not an everyman. Geralt is a specific character.
No, it's more like Uncharted, right? Like Nathan Drake has characteristics, and you can't change them. You, the player.
Yeah. It's not as important that he's like, say, a Booker from BioShock Infinite, where the way he is super different, like dictates what this is about. It's not that, but he definitely has a point of view, and you can't change it, really.
I think James Bond is a good comparison. He basically goes on adventures, and you don't need to know details about what's going on in his mind or heart to care. You just know enough to know that he's a cool dude, and you hope he kills the monster, and it's a fun ride.
I think also, I mean, he benefits from being like relatively humble. You know what I mean? Like James Bond is a slick asshole.
No, Geralt is likable.
Yeah.
In several dimensions. Again, without ever talking in any other way but this.
Right. And
it's through his actions that you realize he's a good guy, because he does the things that you would consider good aligned in Dungeons and Dragons.
He also, I mean, he definitely, like, he has his moments where he's sort of hobnobbing with high level elites, but for the most part, he's kind of a commoner.
Yeah.
You know, and he's kind of used to living in taverns and shit, you know?
Witchers are, as much as they're relied upon, a common dynamic that I enjoy in storytelling. As much as they're relied upon, they're also feared. People hate them because they're weird and different. Yeah.
I loved meeting all the different prejudiced townspeople, because they were all very believable, you know?
And it actually made you genuinely appreciate when you'd meet a townsperson who'd go like, "Oh, don't be scared, Witcher. I know that shit ain't true. Like, let's talk like gentlemen, you and I." Right. And you're like, "Oh, I met a non-racist person on the road. That's kind of cool." Because some of the people in the world do consider it just a silly prejudice and don't. Yeah, but it's like Deus Ex taps into those themes, as does X-Men. I think Wolverine is a good comparison to Geralt as well.
Yeah, Wolverine's generally more surly than Geralt is, but they're close. Yes. They're similar. For sure.
And they both love to fuck. Like, there's the thing about Wolverine is that he's sad, but he's also horny.
Yep.
And the thing about The Witcher that everyone eventually wants to talk about is, yes, this is the game where you fuck a lot.
Yeah,
it's got that Mass Effect vibe. Most of the people that you come into contact with that are main characters, you can get a simple sex scene with if you play your cards right. And in fact, was it Witcher?
Really try.
Was it Witcher 2 that literally had cards?
Witcher 3 also had cards. The Gwent,
Witcher 3,
the game of Gwent? Yeah.
No, not Gwent. In one of the Witcher games, I think it's 2 because I don't believe I played 1, but maybe it's 1. In one of the Witcher games, not 3, every woman in the world map that you successfully fuck, you get a collectible card.
Oh, wow.
That like shows her vagina. It's like those hentai games where you'd unlock like, hey, you unlocked a naked picture of a lady.
Is that true? Oh my God, that's crazy. Is that true?
They're softcore style. Like the art, it'll be like she's leaning over in her peasant outfit and she's holding her skirt up and it's her rump or whatever. But yeah, I'm going to make sure I'm right so I'm not being a total.
Well, also what you just described is very different than a rendering of a woman's vagina, but
collectible sex cards.
That changes how I feel about Geralt a little bit, because like at least in Witcher 3, for the most part, the sex acts are, they're prostitutes, obviously, because that's just a thing we have to have in games, I guess. But also, it's all the main mages. It's all the main witches that he meets that he can sleep with or not.
It's doing honor to the book, which is considered like a fantasy romance. It's the kind of book series that would have in the old days, like Fabio on the cover in a ripped billowing shirt. It's like he's going to kill stuff with swords and he's going to fuck really romantically.
Right.
So I think the game, I think to be true to the property, they're like, Geralt fucks. That's part of the story. That's part of what fans like about The Witcher.
Yeah.
Romance
I don't
cards.
hate that about the game.
Also called sex cards in the game.
Whoa.
Within Witcher 1. Are a trophy of sorts collected over the course of the game whenever Geralt sleeps with a female character. Which I also thought it was weird that you can't blow Dandelion in this. It's 2019, for God's sake.
Yeah,
Dandelion being the male bard, by the way.
It was a little weird, and also just you can't pick a Dandelion. Give us some freedom here. No, it was weird that he was purely heterosexual. I didn't understand that. It was like, at this point, why are we doing that still?
Although, I know that some people will say, and I guess it's a point, well, if the character's hetero in the book and it's based on the book, yeah, fine. But this is a game. It's interactive. I don't know. I'm just saying. In Mass Effect, I believe you can go either way, and I appreciate that.
Right, and I also think that Geralt having sort of seen and done so many things, not being even remotely curious after living for 150 years, seems a little close-minded. You know what I mean? I just feel like, I don't know. I just feel like it seems a little close-minded still.
Yeah, you see a lot of nipples.
Right.
The vaginal canal is generally covered. But I don't know who this woman is, but there's one fully nude demon lady squatting down with just a tiny piece of jewelry barely covering her vagina. They're pretty.
That's pretty explicit.
I mean,
yeah.
I got to wrap up right now, actually. No, this.
I'm glad I didn't look this up.
Who is this?
Well, that's one of the. That's one of the. There's a kind of demon or whatever that is, right? With the horns.
Yeah, but overall, I'd say they're softcore.
Yeah.
Porn paintings. Anyway, the point being, Witcher is a horny game franchise.
That's
game part of it.
Chose to make it a little bit more about relationships. It sounds like, because for the most, again, there are other side quests, but for the most part, you're choosing between one of three-ish women that you're going to stick with, and if you don't make the right choice, you are boned, and not in the great way. You're living a lonely bachelor life way.
And that's what I mean is in Witcher 1, you can sleep with just a nameless barmaid and get her card.
Yeah.
So I do feel like CD Projekt Red basically took the franchise, and by the time they hit Witcher 3, they felt like they'd succeeded enough that they could focus more on what interests them, which I genuinely believe is the monster fighting, and less on the sex for the sake of doing honor to the books. Although my understanding is the show will be pretty saucy as well. Because why wouldn't you for TV?
Premium, yeah. Well, it's not. It's premium TV, right? That's that's one of the distinguishers. So sure.
Saucy.
Henry Cavill's playing Geralt. Is that what you said?
Yeah, Superman himself.
And
right?
Oh, right.
One of the Supermen.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, how did you feel about the fighting now that you've stepped back and we've covered the sex? How did you feel about the fighting, really?
I thought 3 was the best of the 3. I really respect 3, and it makes me very excited for Cyberpunk. But it's still not my favorite ever. The last episode we will have released is the Control episode. I thought it was about on par with Control. It felt mostly connected and visceral, but not all the way there. In the same way that I would say Control feels like, I was describing it as feeling like you're playing on a PC, whether you're playing on a console or not. I think Witcher has the same thing. It feels like, I don't know what to say, man. Maybe it's the vibrational programming in the controller, but I played both of these on console, and this is weird to say, but when I play Destiny, let's say, it feels very grounded and like I'm on a console.
Right.
And when I play The Witcher and when I play Control, and I can name other games that feel this way, when I swing my sword or when I fire my weapon, it feels like I'm clicking a mouse. I don't know how to describe it better.
I know
than
why. Because it feels like there's just a little bit of de-emphasizing the action feeling of it. Witcher feels a little more distant from being an action sequence than Control, which feels much more distant from an action sequence than Modern Warfare, which we used in that episode, or Destiny. Both of those feel
Or
very
for God's
present.
sake, any platformer where you're like,
Right.
you press the button, they jump instantaneously. These things are connected. My synapses fire. I feel like this button makes them jump. In The Witcher, it feels like this button makes this. It's like Assassin's Creed has this too, and it's not a big knock. Plenty of great games do this, and it's just a weird taste thing. Like I press X a smattering of times, and he does a sequence of really cool sword moves, but they aren't like directly tied to what I did. He just does stuff.
Yeah. They've tried to see. Assassin's Creed has been making choices to try to fix that, I think.
Yeah, they have.
Whereas I feel like Witcher 3 is less concerned about that. Like, for instance, when I upgraded my character, one of the first things I did is get the sword spin move. Like I worked really hard to get the sword spin move, and once you get that move, you do so much damage with your sword that that's basically what you're going to use on every single enemy that you can. Like you're just going to sword spin, and that's it.
The sigils seemed like there should have been creative ways to make them more important to combat.
I agree with that, and especially because
Igni, what was the mind control? Mind control is basically the one that you just end up going, well, why would I use anything else? It's effectively like a stun move.
I think,
and then I'll just chop everyone else up with my sword.
I basically didn't. You have to use the traps when it comes to ghosts to make them appear, and you have to use Igni on some of the ghosts, the wild hunts figures and stuff.
You end up using them when it's like this creature's only weak to this.
But the truth is, I didn't use them at all unless it was clear to me I couldn't just walk in there and beat the hell out of this guy with my sword.
With a sword, yeah, agreed.
And that's mostly what I did,
And yet I find it engaging because, again, the world map is meticulously well planned in terms of how much stuff there is to do. I would say second only to Breath of the Wild in terms of density of interesting stuff to do by square foot.
Sure.
And the side quests are so interesting, like little fables, like hearing a Delaire's Greek myth or something.
They're so much better than any game I can think of, short of maybe New Vegas, for having interesting and sort of offbeat ideas that you play out. Even though, for the most part, most of the side quests are either going to be a dialogue tree or track down a monster. Like 90% of them, they're still that varied and interesting.
You're usually learning about a type of monster that's not that well known in American culture, at least.
Right.
So like that little childlike creature that lives in the tree stump outside the town and is like mischievous. They're just so cool. You just meet, you meet a lot of cool characters.
Yeah,
you get to know monsters. A lot of cool cats.
Yeah.
I do find the overall sauciness silly. I don't know. I just thought it was funny how what's the mage's name? Who's his ex-girlfriend?
Triss,
and Triss Marigold, and she's now just a friend and a companion that helps you through the plot. I think you can end up with her
if
you choose to, right? But my point is, I just don't. Maybe I'm a prude, man. I don't know. Maybe it's empowering. I don't get it. The stakes are that sorcery is becoming frowned upon in a persecutorial way.
They're persecuting.
They're rounding up and executing witches and wizards. I don't know why she's wearing basically nothing, and her first shot is like her taking a bath, and you're like, "What's going on?" And she's like, "They're murdering all of us." Also,
that's the other one, right?
Also, my titties are popping.
Right.
I don't know. It's just all the women are highly sexualized,
right?
And I don't even know if that's bad anymore. It might be empowering now. I don't know what it is, but
it didn't feel like it was done in a way that's like, what a badass chick. It definitely felt more like you're gonna know this woman in the biblical sense.
It felt like the three female characters you can end up with were flagged by their costumes as sex prizes you can end up with.
Definitely. It was not. It was never subtle. Like Yennefer, who I think is the game's primary love interest, at least that's what they decided this one, is way too cosmically dressed and hot to ever blend into a crowd of medieval peasants and be like, I got a witch, me? Which? No way.
It's that you will go through this world map, and everyone you see will legitimately be like a Monty Python haggard extra with mud on their face and one tooth.
Yeah, a goblin, but not in the literal sense, in the looks department.
But then you'll see Yennefer, and she's like, I also am from the 1400s, and I'm trying to lay low. And you're like, you look like fucking Catherine Zeta-Jones going to the Oscars. Are you kidding me?
Try getting any dirt on your outfit. Any dirt on there might help. Like a little bit of dirt.
Put a burlap sack on instead of this, like, this incredible gown with feathering and silver inlay and shit. Yeah.
This shroud made of crow's feathers that's like in perfect shape doesn't really say modern peasant to me.
Yeah, but it's sort of that. It made me have sort of a superhero feel.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, totally. I guess they're special, so they wear special costumes because they're magic.
Well, and then, of course, you're special because you're the one that's befriending them, let's say.
But as ostentatious as Geralt's outfit is, it looks like armor that a fantasy character would wear in medieval times. I would argue that Triss is wearing, honestly, like a Christian Dior gown. It's bizarre looking to me.
She again, her outfit is too hot, and I'll put that in like to totally work. But see, Geralt, you can dress Geralt in sort of the outfit of the times, except for if you start getting the really slick outfits, like the masterworked, again, the cat armor, the bear armor, the wolf armor, whatever. Then he never seems like a regular Joe. From that point on, he seems like, oh, so you're one of the best fighters ever. I see. Because nobody has that armor. That armor looks sick.
Open world epic fantasy has that problem baked in, I think. Because in Skyrim, it was a popular joke of like, it's funny how now I've spent 120 hours in this world. I'm the head of the Assassin's Guild. Right. I killed the Emperor, but I'm also the most powerful wizard and the head of the Thieves and Fighters Guild.
Right.
And I did this and that, and I slayed the dragon, and I fucked your mom. And it's like, you still when I come into Whiterun,
who the fuck are you?
Guard goes, who the fuck are you? You're like, excuse me, sir. I'm the goddamn dragonborn. Like, I am
your Thane, you son of a bitch. I am a Thane.
I'm Thane of this town. I'm wearing dragon work armor.
Right.
Like, God, get off it, man.
This is a necklace made of magic teeth, and you don't know who I am?
Yeah. I have a giant thrall, and you don't show me some goddamn respect.
I'm going to summon a dragon. I'm going to summon him right in front of you. What do you think that means, motherfucker?
He looks like Macho Man Randy Savage, so get your shit together. But I can forgive that. And I do think the world is... Let me put it this way. Skyrim is universally agreed to be one of the most important gaming experiences ever.
Certainly in the last 20 years.
I think this stands up against Skyrim as an open world fantasy game, and that's quite an accomplishment for a small team like this.
The nice thing about Skyrim as compared to this is that I feel like Skyrim is a much more customizable experience than The Witcher is. But I think
you're whatever you want to be. Yeah, you're just the player.
And also, it's more of a true RPG in that sense, right? It's like you can really do anything. Witcher 3 is more of a campaign. Like it's more of a robust campaign.
Yeah. It feels like Uncharted to me, and I only mean in the sense of I feel like those two games have the same ratio of guidance to freedom.
I think even Final Fantasy serves...
Oh, hey! Or Uncharted 4 specifically. You're like, you're here in this giant field. There's a bunch of artifacts and ruins. Go wherever you want. And you do whatever you want for a while. And they're like, but this is happening now.
But maybe like, over the pirate area. The pirate area. Go over there. Yeah. I agree. It's a little... It's faux open world. Again, Final Fantasy is not a bad touchstone here either, because Final Fantasy doesn't let you open world. Final Fantasy doesn't let you decide who your character is. Like you might be able to decide what your crew is, but you are really on the journey they're giving you. And
you can usually name yourself. You can name yourself Dr. Ass if you want, or whatever.
Neat, but you're still going to be the guy with the black cloak and the shotgun/sword. Ooh. I know. Dr. Ass, he's a hell of a warrior.
I was just thinking of how cool Aron is. I want Aron and Geralt of Rivia to make out. That would be the
Sure.
best.
Yeah, why
Yeah.
can't he meet him in some strange pub someplace?
Hell yeah, dude.
Yeah, meet
I
Auron.
want I want Geralt to collect that Aron card.
We'll just have to write our own fanfics for that. Yeah.
I can fix that arm for you.
Can you even see over that sleeve?
I can't
Take
tell
it
which is
off.
Geralt and which is Aron. They
Yeah.
sound the same. Oh shit, never mind. That was true for last game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So why, aside from just like the side quests and this, like, what about the gameplay is fun to you? You know, because it is inferior to a lot of these things we're comparing it to.
Similar to Outer Worlds or New Vegas, the dialogue trees being robust.
Yeah, that's the best thing about it.
The fact that you can level up and that the voice acting is good, that you can level up and the writing is solid, that you can level up your mind control and it opens new dialogue options, and that the dialogue is in the service of telling short stories about folklore. And I like folklore. It's the same reason I like God of War's plot, because less so, like, I think Kratos is fucking stupid, honestly. But the stories nested within it, like the guy who's turning into a tree.
Yeah, I like that too.
I like Greek mythology, and so I love that aspect. And it makes me, but I'll be honest, I'm more sci-fi than fantasy all day, every day. So I am waiting for Cyberpunk, like,
me too,
with bated
definitely.
breath.
Like, even this Tesla truck that just got announced a couple of days ago is like, honestly, the first thing I think was like, oh shit, that Cyberpunk game's coming out. Yeah.
Yep.
You know?
And I think in my life, and this is probably doing it a disservice, but from the second Cyberpunk's trailer dropped, Witcher has been recontextualized to me, the entire franchise, as tech demos and a training area for CD Projekt Red to prepare to make Cyberpunk. To me, it's all about Cyberpunk. I'm just waiting for Cyberpunk. And I look at Witcher 3 through that lens of like, this bodes well for Cyberpunk.
It's funny that you say that.
It's a strong foundation.
Yeah, but funny enough, Cyberpunk is coming out at the end of this console cycle instead of at the launch of the next
beginning
one,
of the next. Yeah.
Which I don't understand, because it's like, dude, isn't it a perfect property to launch an Xbox or whatever? You know, like,
yeah.
I don't
it's got Keanu, the original Sonic the Hedgehog.
Like, and I mean, I don't want to get off into too big of a tangent here. It's weird that we end up getting sort of like 2 or 3 of the best releases usually at the end of these console cycles, when it's like, just delay it 6 months and release it on the better hardware.
But wouldn't that mean completely, I don't know enough about programming to understand, but if they delayed it 6 months, aren't you now talking a whole new engine and board?
I don't think
no?
because I don't think so. Like Grand Theft Auto 5, for instance, which, if you remember, was at the end of the last console cycle, also released like 3 months into the beginning of the new one. Same with Last of Us, which was the same year as well.
Yeah. Okay. People who are like hardware heads or have actually like soldered circuit boards together in the comments, let us know.
Maybe they know. Yeah.
How different is the PS4 from the PS3? Meaning, if you had a game and you were writing the code and the software and it's all ready to go at the end of PS3, how hard is it to wait and release it on PS4 instead, for example?
Am I making a real ass out of myself right now? Or or is this like is this a legitimate gripe? Because to me, it's like,
or maybe they're double dipping. Maybe they will get that money and they will re-release it on PS5.
Well, see, it's funny that you say
6 months into the run,
because both of these consoles
we're funny guys.
Both of these consoles are promising backwards compatibility, which the last ones did not.
Which makes it not even a relevant question in some ways.
So it's like, well, why? You know what I mean? Like, why wouldn't you featureize this thing so that it plays on the new one?
Because $60 is $60, and if the price point's still $60,
yeah, I guess
what's the difference? Yeah,
I mean, we're gonna play it. I'm playing Cyberpunk, and I'm definitely
playing the shit out of it.
Last of Us 2. So what are you gonna do?
Yeah, but anyway, you rescue Ciri, your adoptive daughter.
Yeah, Ciri. See, funny enough, Ciri is a character who I resonated with the least in this game, and I think it's because even though you play as her at times, she's still kind of she's sort of a Harry Potter cipher figure who has
Oh, she's a
less.
special little girl. She's gonna go
Right.
places.
Very special. Cool hair.
She's
Great
full of
moves.
magic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Full of elder magic. But I still feel like, but devoid of as much personality as nearly everybody else in this game, like including Geralt. Like
Oh, okay.
she is a little bit more sort of like feisty damsel in distress the entire game, whereas Yennefer is an interesting person, Triss is an interesting person, Geralt is a very interesting person, and then like random townsman number 7 is an interesting person.
That's what I would say is the random townspeople's stories as parables are interesting and well crafted.
I think
Whereas
I also just prefer parables to whatever the contemporary like it's the sci-fi version of
drama,
it.
like character driven drama.
No. I
To sci-fi.
to
Oh, are you?
sci-fi's exact same version, right? Like they also tell parables, but they're a little bit more like thought experiments and less like sort of
Yeah, sci-fi tends to be, which is it's sometimes called speculative fiction.
yeah.
It's more about, well, what if, well, if you look at this trend today and you project out, this might happen. That would be interesting. Think about that.
That's true, and
Yeah.
I like speculation quite a bit. Obviously, since I do a podcast,
Mhm.
but I think that for some reason I find moral parables about the way people have lived more compelling than I do thought experiments about the way people will live. I don't
Well,
know. Interesting.
I find the writing in Witcher 3 and all the Witchers, because I guess I have played one. I've probably played 1 and 3 in that case, because I know there's one I skipped. But I remember the cards. Oh, the cards. I also, speaking of cards, you asked me what I liked about it. Gwent does fucking rule. Gwent is really
I
addictive.
also really liked Gwent. I totally did. I played every single round I could of that game.
I'm also someone who very much liked Final Fantasy X's stupid ball in the pool game.
I liked it
Buzzball or whatever. I loved it. But what I was gonna say is I find the writing somewhat sterile, and I'm not using that in a negative sense. But matter of fact, and the characters don't express a lot of heightened emotions. It's no Beverly Hills 90210. Like they're not, like all of them are very calm and in command of their own emotional state all of the time. You know what I mean? Like even though the world's gonna end, they're like, oh wow, the world's gonna end. Yes, we must do this to prevent the world from ending, which is kind of like how the bridge crew of like Next Generation acts. And that's a great milieu for parables. All I'm going to say about it is I think it applies even better to sci-fi because sci-fi is an alienated society generally, and Cyberpunk certainly looks like it's going to be, or it's like a Shadowrun style civilization, at which point I think alienation and people just talking in matter-of-fact terms feels way more at home.
We're also projecting a sort of emotional maturity that we think we're going to develop over time as a society onto the future. Mm-hmm. And I think the reason we accept it in this folklore version is that these people are all wizened, sort of like life experience people. And Ciri, by the way, doesn't fit that mold. She is like a very reactive, emotional person.
That's true.
That's interesting.
Yeah, that's true. So they can write reactionary emotional characters. I guess I just find it interesting that, and people get great results by switching this and bucking this trend. So there's plenty of examples that fly in the face of this general rule. But as a general rule, I find that fantasy is emotional and sci-fi is analytical. And
I think that's true.
That is why, for example, I consider Star Wars fantasy set in space, not sci-fi, because sci-fi wouldn't have, the Force is magic. It's not fully, I know there's midichlorian. I don't want to get into this, but you know what I'm saying.
You and I had this exact debate when I wrote
Star Wars is full of plot lines that are about, but I love her.
Right.
But I can't, but that's
romance.
Impossible.
Right.
You can't be my father. I hate you. Love fights hate. These are fantasy themes. Whereas the sci-fi theme is like, don't you think phones are going to lead to a future where everyone's alienated? That's a thought and a thesis. It's not.
Totally.
what would it be like to hate your own father and find out someone
Right.
you hate is your father? And I think Witcher is more sci-fi in tone than fantasy, even though it is fantasy. And so I'm excited to see them wrap themselves in a sci-fi world and just be
Yeah.
analytical.
Just like a science fiction enthusiast, you're projecting what you see in The Witcher out into what this new thing's going to be, and having your own little
Yes.
pleasure thought experiment about it.
Oh yeah.
And
Plus, I like shooting better than slashing.
I agree. Although the way that the slashing works makes me worry about how the shooting's going to be in Cyberpunk, because shooting is a thing we don't forgive if it's bad.
And it's an art form, and
Right.
CD Projekt Red, for all they've done right, are kind of untested in the area of programming shooting physics.
Lord knows that the Fallout series has taken its share of shit because the shooting is not up to Call of Duty standards.
Oh yeah. All Outer Worlds did was do Fallout if the shooting was not god awful and you're like, wow, this feels great. I've wanted this for so long.
I'm going to play that game, and we'll talk about that game because I'm definitely going to play it.
Fallout with the shooting not being balls.
I think, yeah, but also it's not apocalyptic.
No, the story is very different, but you know what I mean on a mechanical level.
Totally.
And that's all I wanted. I didn't want more from it than that. I'm like, good, you fixed the thing that everyone knew sucked about your franchise. Good job.
You also really like the apocalypse as a breeding ground for story. At least I think you do, based on our conversations about Fallout. And the Outer Worlds chose intentionally to get rid of that, which is a very foundational thing. So I'm just kind of curious about it.
I can't respond because the response would be 25 minutes long.
Oh, fair enough. But let's hold on to that because we'll talk about it at some point.
No, so, I'm not about to unpack that right now.
Who did you choose to romance in the game?
Oh, Yennefer.
Me too. I feel like it was such a strong suggestion.
We're in the third installment, and it's in the start of the game. They're together, so you would have to. I don't know.
Fight the game a little bit.
I understand that it's not cheating if you break up or whatever, but I just felt like, well, I started the game and I'm already with this lady. She seems perfectly nice. May as well stay together. I don't care.
I wouldn't call her perfectly nice, but I would call her...
Yennefer seems very like a good partner, very capable.
I think she's very capable. She seems a lot less honest than Triss does. But also you have that really cool mission with her where you end up sort of diving in the ocean and uncovering a thing that is like really bothering her and from her past, and you get a little bit more vulnerability from her.
Which is bonding, yeah.
Yeah. So, and of course, all your lovers, you have the bonding missions should you want them.
Who's the third? I'm not recalling.
It's that witch. It's that witch from the very beginning who... whose name I can't remember.
Wait, who you go to visit her in her grotto and she's in the bath?
I believe so.
Oh, that's not Triss. Okay.
No, that's not Triss. Triss is the one with the red hair.
Triss.
Triss is the one in the town with the red hair. Yeah.
Okay, so that girl, anyone who cares, when I was describing the woman who I think is over-sexualized to a degree that seems tokenistic, it's not Triss. It's the lady you meet in the bathtub.
Yes, whose name, I'm looking it up now because I can't remember it.
Okay. But I was like, I get it, game. I could fuck her if I want to. I understand.
Oh, Kira. Her name is Kira.
And you can have her nightly.
I don't think actually. It seems like you actually are really choosing between Triss and Yennefer. And if you do it wrong, by the way, if you do the wrong thing, then prompts a mission that's called 3 to Tango, where it looks like you're going to have a threesome with both of them, and they're like, nope, you lose us both because you couldn't pick, and you're like, damn it,
damn it,
yeah, damn it,
but
back to the cave, back to the cave, the Joker's calling, yeah, so it's fun. I think the game sort of strongly wants you to pick Yennefer, but I think Triss exists to
we might be
marry
projecting
it.
We might be projecting the idea that in our culture the good thing to do would be like the wife and 2.5 kids route. I think that's what Yennefer represents.
Well, that's one of the potential endings you can get in the game. Because there's like 4 or 5 endings, and one of the quote-unquote happiest ones is that Geralt sort of retires with Yennefer.
He's
and they
sterile,
live
though, right?
I believe so. Yeah, that's
I
part of.
believe
Oh,
Witchers are
that's why
sterile.
Witchers get. That's why Witchers are always getting it because they can't impregnate
Oh.
women.
And there's no birth control at this time in history, so it's like one of
Right.
the few safe sex
Right.
options for a
It's like
woman is a Witcher,
lambskins
yeah.
and nothing else. So yeah,
So you're like, yeah, fuck the Witcher though.
yeah. He puts on a
He
little dick oil and he's good to
dude,
go.
he must be a vector for so many STDs that don't affect him because of
Well,
his immunity.
that's possible if that is possible. But
Unless
maybe
his system kills STDs,
which seems reasonable.
We don't get into that.
Why? Yeah, you never really hear complaints of illness from the.
That's my so like Wolverine heals, right? Does
Right.
Wolverine's X factor kill syphilis that's on it in his bloodstream? Like, does it prevent all disease?
Having only read 4 Wolverine comics in my life, I can confidently say definitely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
like,
definitely.
Why not?
Totally.
Why would not? Why would he have healing abilities but not the ability to kill germs and viruses and stuff?
Right, like he can't get malaria.
Right.
Right?
No.
Yeah.
He can he can dance all the way through those the malaria ridden areas of that continent and he'll be fine.
See, why can't Geralt fuck Wolverine? That's what you want to see.
This is a game that definitely invites fan fiction.
Oh yeah, I'm thinking of all kinds of great slash fics with this.
Right.
Oh, Wolverine slash fic. It's perfect.
All right. Write that down. Write that down. That's a new podcast. Every episode we think of a new podcast idea. Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, that's fine.
Anything else you want to say about this game, or do you want to pass our final checkpoint?
I think we should pass the checkpoint because just to recap what I think we've said is that it is quite a good game that you should play if you like parables and fables. Your character that you are forced to navigate these fables with is a classic James Bond type cipher set in a fantasy world, but it's all fine. All fine.
The one thing we haven't said is that Geralt also, when you're doing the detective stuff, has a little bit of a noir detective vibe because he narrates to himself about like, this thing happened. Probably one of those ghouls. And that's kind of fun.
He's a super tracker. Which Batman is as well in those games. But yeah, he can summon up the details of a crime scene and all that. And in the show, I guess it's going to be noir horror. So the show is going to be basically, he's usually fighting a monster and the monster's pretty scary. And it'll be monster of the week shit. Could be good. I don't know. I'll watch it.
Keep or delete. Keep or delete. Are you going to delete this? You going to keep it? What you doing?
I gotta delete.
You're deleting it.
Yeah, I just feel like knowing that it's weird, man. I guess I only care about story, but it has a good story. I don't get it. I think that it's so close to so many things I consider masterpieces, like Hellboy. It's hard for me not to compare it to those things. And I find the gameplay component very polished and very strong, but very functional and not that imaginative. Just, it's good. And then the story is very good, but I keep coming back to what I've been dancing around at the end here, which is that Geralt is inherently uninteresting to me in the way that James Bond is inherently uninteresting to me. I just don't think the game's juicy enough. There's not enough emotion in it. And that turns me off. And I think that Cyberpunk, I won't be turned off because I don't care if sci-fi has emotion in it. That's what I've been trying to get at.
What RPG main character have you cared about more than Geralt?
Probably the kid from Lunar Eternal Blue.
Okay.
That game made me cry a few times
for
over my concern for the kid. But I was young as well when I played that. Let me try and pull a recent one. What's the RPG where you've cared most about the protagonist in an emotional sense?
I think Geralt is it.
Really?
I mean, it's not that
but
I'm like,
you know what I mean when I say,
what about Geralt? What's going to happen to him? I mean,
he's always going to be fine. Like he has no emotions.
Yes,
he'll be fine.
That's fine. But I still really enjoy playing as him and hearing his point of view. And that's enough to me because like every game protagonist is going to be fine. I'm playing them. You know what I mean? Like, so I'm not that worried about him.
I really rooted for Booker very hard to find some kind of peace. It wasn't even for him to live to the end of the game per
In
se.
BioShock Infinite?
Infinite, but
Yeah.
and I think as time wears on, we all kind of agree BioShock Infinite had a weak act 2, and the gameplay could have been stronger. But all that aside, whatever the mix or whatever your feelings on BioShock Infinite, I really wanted Booker to like sort out his damage and come out okay in the end. I did feel very connected.
That's true. Although my only caveat there be that is not an RPG.
Oh shit! All right, then Lunar Eternal Blue is my answer.
Well, and see, the reason I'm saying it is because like I feel like just on the strength of what a great character to follow around alone, you got to keep Witcher 3. Just that, and let alone the parables.
There's no party system.
Yeah, like for instance, again, I'm thinking of all 4 or 5 Final Fantasies that I've played. I didn't care about anybody in those games as much as I cared about Yennefer or Geralt.
But I don't care about Geralt nearly as much as I care about Hellboy when I read the Hellboy comics. And I guess it's not fair to compare different mediums, but
I mean, like, I don't care about Geralt as much as I care about, like, anybody in Last of Us. Yeah. Right. Or, exactly.
By the way, the hero from Lunar Eternal Blue's name, Hero.
Oh, is it? I've never played that game.
Oh, great Sega CD game.
Of course it was Sega CD. I didn't even need you to tell me. I fucking knew it.
Good. Yeah.
I saw it spinning in my eyes. Anyway, I'm keeping this. You're deleting it.
I'm deleting it. Once again, our podcast has resolved nothing. Did you cry when Aerith died?
Well, see, I played that game after it had been spoiled for me.
Okay.
So I already knew that was coming. But I would that's a game I feel like it's a little overrated, quite honestly.
We've both been playing the remake, and I think that's going to be our take on it. Spoiler alert.
Well, no, we haven't been playing the remake. We've been playing the old re-release of it, and then the remake hasn't come out yet.
Sorry, re-release. Yes.
Yeah, because the remake hasn't come out, but I imagine
the original. We've been playing the original, but I mean, it got re-released recently, and both Adam and I have been playing it. And both of us agree that we'll probably cover the remake instead, because when you replay the original in this day and age,
it doesn't
we've
work.
Just been spoiled. Yeah. There's not enough elements to it. It's too simple. Yeah. It becomes boring because my brain's used to more systems than it has.
Final Fantasy deserves some conversation on this podcast because it's definitely within the fantasy genre as you've outlined it in terms of the kinds of subjects it covers, but it's a weird mix artistically of both sort of sci-fi and fantasy genres.
Yeah.
And I want to talk about some version of that game to see if you dig that or not.
Later. Some other time.
Yeah,
but this has been a blast.
It really has.
We don't usually do open-ended questions, but let us know in the comments what RPG protagonist you emotionally connected with the most. I bet we'll get some Nesses.
Yeah, definitely.
But I'm interested to see what other people think.
Cloud. Although
Cloud doesn't speak, though. I think that's such a bullshit answer.
Yeah, he does. He has like 3 or 4 lines. He's Geralt. He's just another Geralt.
He's capable of speaking, but I would argue that Geralt is much more personable. Like you're right. When Geralt talks to himself, when you're just out in the woods alone, at least he says fairly engaging shit to himself.
I have here's another open-ended question to the audience. Is anybody keeping track of what we're keeping and deleting? Because I would love to see the canon as it's been organized for each of us at this point and see how I feel about our lists. You know, like we're gonna have to check in on that.
Wildly inconsistent.
Oh, I'm sure they are, but I still want to check in on it.
All right. Well, we'll do that sometime.
We should. We should. Man. Okay. What a pleasure.
Witcha. Yeah. Thanks for joining us
on 1Upsmanship. Adios.
Subscribe to Showtime.
Work complete.
This has been a Small Beans endeavor. We're a bunch of pals who make podcasts, sketches, music, web series, and movies. The beans always have new ideas percolating, so make sure to check us out at patreon.com/smallbeans. That's patreon.com/smallbeans, where you can browse all of our current and past content, see what we've got planned in the future, and learn how your support can help the small beans grow into huge, giant monster beans. If you enjoyed this content module, please like, rate, subscribe, or tell a friend about us. We love you!